Richard Barris. Okay, what do we go to now?
So, I mean, there's Biden developments. There's the Google antitrust suit. Those, I think, were the other two in the most highest demand, according to the Twitter polls.
So you know what? We'll start with Sarn0 says, I just found out that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma with the former CIA director, Romney security advisor, Koffer Black. And Nancy Pelosi's son, Paul Pelosi Jr., was on board of another Ukrainian energy company called Viscoil. Crazy. So I guess that's an opportune time to get into the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden latest developments of the last week. For anybody who hasn't seen it, there's a good highlight out, the highlight from our last week's session, going over the laptop, the legalities of it, and some nuances that we might not have ever thought of. The developments this week, aside from some videos that have started circulating, aside from, I think it's NPR, there was a report out that NPR made the top-down decision to not cover the story. Mainstream media has not been covering the story and allowing the rest of mainstream media to write it off and say that it's a nothing burger, Russia disinformation, while not covering it so that people don't even know what they're talking about. Okay, we all saw the debates this week as well. Some good back and forths in that debate. What are the latest developments in the scandal and the impact, the relevance to what's going on in terms of the election?
So, I mean, I think legally there's more and more evidence and information that supports that the emails provide further documentation of what was long believed to be the case and what was kind of obvious by common sense, which was that Hunter Biden and people around him were weaponizing access to his father in exchange for whatever you want to call it, the donations, bribes, political payoffs, whatever label you want to stick on it. There's emails that communicate that. There's documents that communicate that. And the other videos that people have focused on, in my view, so my argument to Glenn Greenwald was, it's like, I agree that there's no, that I don't agree with sharing private videos of someone that are not politically pertinent as I see. And if you think there's underage children involved, you definitely shouldn't be sharing them. That should go to the government and then prosecution occur. But remember, folks, any form of possession or distribution of child pornography is a crime, no matter if you're saying, hey, look, this other guy was involved in a crime. So be careful about that.
Yeah, and incidentally, just to go back to the point made last week as to why you rightly think this computer repairman turned the computer over to the FBI in the first place, probably not because of emails, but probably because of something else that would create culpability or liability for the individual in possession of the abandoned property. So yeah, people's curiosity is going to go looking for the videos. It was the question that we asked in the Netflix cuties thing. If you share it, even if you share it for what you think is exposure reasons, the exposure has two meanings for a reason. So, okay, sorry. So go on.
And so the other component with that is, but I did tell Greenwald, I said the pertinence of it, I said from if we were in trial, showing some portion of these other intimate videos would be relevant to authenticating the other documents on there if you're disputing the authenticity like Biden supporters are. So they've created a potential relevance of this other videotape material by continuing to pretend that the emails are not his. Now, Biden himself has never explicitly stated that.
The only people, Biden himself has not denied it, has not apologized for it, has not made any comment whatsoever. The only people doing it are people who are just seem hell-bent on trying to make it go away, before November 3rd.
And the media's ridiculous standards. One of the great things about being a trial lawyer is you couldn't have these hypocritical double standards. I mean, courts sometimes do it, but in a real trial, you can't say, we're going to have one rule of evidence for the plaintiff and a different one from the defendant. One rule for the government and one rule for the defendant. You can't allow that kind of this, but that's what the media does. They have one set of rules when they're talking about Russiagate or Ukrainegate, a different set of rules when they're talking about either Clinton emails or now Biden emails. There's more evidence that the emails are clearly authentic, more emails that they provide evidentiary support and substantiation for what the original accusation was. But the media, and more evidence that the FBI deliberately sat on it and didn't do anything with it, and more evidence that the media will not cover it fairly or accurately. So one question. What I would say is the update has basically affirms what we said last week.
One question someone asked me, and I didn't have a necessarily good answer or retort. Some people are going to say the FBI had it in their possession for a year, which is evidence to the fact that they looked into it and found nothing. There's a fly in here. Found nothing incriminating on it. I mean, how does one respond to that? Or is there a response to that?
They haven't themselves said that. Number one. Number two, they didn't follow up on any investigation that I know of. So it's always a case that you can argue that a cover up was really vindication. But if that's the case, why deny that the emails are his? Why pretend these emails don't exist? So that line of defense hasn't been, even if you accept all these emails as true, there's nothing illicit or problematic about any of them. It's been pretend the emails don't exist or deny that they exist as authentic.
All right, now American Son says or asks, isn't it true that the payoffs the Bidens are getting are common and mostly legal? So this is another thing where I have these discussions where people say it's not illegal. It's just the nature of politics. They scratch your back, you scratch theirs type thing. Hiring the son, not illegal unless there's a overt criminal quid pro quo. I guess not illegal. So I mean, what I say institutionalized corruption, but what do you say to that?
There's no question it's corruption. The one, it's hard to say it doesn't violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Put it this way: by the Democratic interpretation of it and going after Flynn, what Biden did was 10 times more egregious than anything that was even alleged against Flynn. Biden never registered as a foreign agent, and clearly and in fact, the emails talk about his attempts to evade that requirement because it would be so damaging to Biden. To his father, that his son was registered working on behalf of the Ukrainian government or the Chinese government or the Russian government. And what he was doing was far more Foreign Agent Registration Act covered activity than what even Manafort was doing, frankly. So that's issue one in terms of legality. Issue two is the people that he's complicit in are people that were stealing nuclear and military secrets on behalf of the Chinese government from the United States, including people that got criminally prosecuted, people that were involved in bribery in China and Ukraine. So the question becomes, if in fact he was paid off to corruptly interfere with the criminal investigations of those individuals or to facilitate or enable bribery, then that would be problematic and potentially criminally punishable. So the idea that there's no crime in it presumes facts that are, at least at this point, are not proven in their defense.
And I'll bring up the super chat. Dapper Dave says, Robert, didn't Joe Biden, let's forget for a moment if he was directly involved, had an obligation as vice president and a government employee that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's brothers' dealings with foreign governments? See, I think
not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it's really just the Foreign Agents Registration Act. The fact that there's a family tie between them does not by itself impose certain obligations on Joe Biden. It's a loophole in the system deliberately, of course.
Now, the question I had, though, I just watched Giuliani's podcast on Sunday that someone had sent me, so thank you very much, whoever that was. The question that it's the same arguments going back where this whole Joe Biden getting the prosecutor fired or they don't get the $1 billion in aid. They didn't get him fired because he was corrupt. They got him fired because he wasn't fighting corruption hard enough. I mean, do you have a one-liner or a two-liner or a three-paragraph response to that commonly used argument?
Sure. I mean, one is that the emails show that, in fact, the entire goal was to get that prosecutor off of Burisma, not to have him further investigate Burisma. The second question is, why did Burisma pay Hunter Biden a bunch of money and these other politically connected people if their goal was to make sure Joe Biden criminally punished and prosecuted them more? Does that make sense to people? And then third, if this prosecutor was so corrupt, why is he only the only broke ex-politician in Ukraine? So he's the best evidence of honesty is what happens afterwards. If the guy's broke after they leave office, well, that means he was probably being honest while he was in office. If they leave office and suddenly they're on a yacht, well, it might be a different story.
Getting paid $600,000 an hour to talk about life as a prosecutor in Ukraine. I've been
or be Peter Strzok and get a sweet gig at Georgetown University. Peter
Strzok, I just realized that he's suing for wrongful dismissal. I don't know if I'm going to want to get into that lawsuit. I
have a case related to it because I'm suing on behalf of Robin Gritz against the FBI. She was partially fired because she was allied with Flynn. And they're letting the Strzok cases go forward. They're letting the McCabe case go forward. By golly, let's see if they let my case go forward, because it's going to be mighty peculiar for the D.C. courts to say somehow my case can't go forward, but theirs can. when my claim is stronger than theirs. And if that case goes forward, discovery is going to be happening, and that will include depositions of Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok. So we'll be having a little fun if we get going.
Oh boy. There may be some future material for vlogs in there. I've been hearing that Joe Biden is not allowed into the Ukraine now.
I don't believe that is true.
Okay.
So I mean, I think it's been a wide. There's the rumors get crazy this time of year. So the Ukraine's not dumb. Ukraine's not going to cut itself off from either side. The new president is trying to stay neutral. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to stay out of it because he doesn't know who's going to win, and he knows he's got to get along with whoever that is.
All right, now I'm going to bring up this comment, First Domino Free Flynn, which is a perfect segue into the Flynn developments before we get